Assalamualaikum and very good day to everyone. So today we'll continue with our second week for ESC 3017 Biosphere Ecology. Biosphere Ecology. So recap from last week's lesson. Last week we covered the formation of the universe, the formation of the earth, the formation of life on earth, the characteristics and the building blocks of life, and also the driver for biodiversity. I hope you still remember the formation of the universe, Big Bang theory, and the formation of the earth. Following that, formation of life on earth that started in the water body, and then the characteristics and the building blocks of life, the metabolism, reproduction, adaptation. There's another one, therefore, and then the driver for biodiversity, which is the continental drift, and the environment, the habitat of the organism. And what is biosphere? Last time we say that biosphere is the region of the surface and the atmosphere of the earth that is occupied by life. So if we draw it as a diagram, it will look like this. Atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, and then by atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, and then biosphere is over there in the middle. It encompasses everything because we have life basically in all three other spheres. So what are the components of biosphere? So like I already showed you on the previous slide, we have atmosphere, hydrosphere, and also lithosphere. These three are the components of biosphere. So let's cover a little bit about atmosphere. So atmosphere consists of gases that are important to life, such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and also nitrogen. So you know that life needs oxygen. We need oxygen. Most life needs oxygen for respiration. And then carbon dioxide is very important to plants. Plants use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and then change it into oxygen. And nitrogen is very important to plants. They use it to grow. And ozone layer is important to protect life on Earth. You can imagine without the ozone layer, we will be exposed to the sun, to the radiation from the sun, and that is very detrimental for us. And wind cycle in the atmosphere helps to distribute gases and also spores. So if you can see here, the atmosphere, we have the ozone layer right here. This is basically where life are. And yeah, so hydrosphere. I don't really cover a lot about atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere because I know that you will take courses for each one of them. So we will just cover a little bit what makes these things, these spheres, part of the components of biosphere, okay? So hydrosphere, it includes water on Earth, covers around 73% of Earth. It holds life, definitely because we have life living in all water body. At least we will have microorganisms in there, if not like fish and prawns and seafood and algae, things like that. So it is very important to life, and it is believed that the first form of life to be originated in water bodies. So you see that here, this diagram shows water from here, river, and then the water cycle like that, and also those that goes in the groundwater, and also that carries life as well. And lithosphere, it is the solid part of the earth, so it is here. It is crust and also part of the mantle, the uppermost mantle. And the crust is very important for life and also death, of course. So the crust is very important because it gives life their habitats, and then it gives nutrients. It holds nutrients for life, and also it serves as a medium to hold life, and also like it allows the cycles of minerals, cycles of water, gases happen in lithosphere. So with these three things, atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, these are the like a biotic part of life itself. They are not living, but they are part of biosphere. So it is important in biosphere. So we have talked about lithosphere, atmosphere, and also uh, hydrosphere. So then what is ecosphere? So I want you to look what is ecosphere and then submit your answer on Putrablas. That will be your attendance for this week's lecture. So let's talk about the organizations of living things. So we already learned last time that matter is made from proton, neutron, electron, and then that makes up atom. And the atoms together, they will mix up molecule. A big molecule is called as macromolecules. And the macromolecules, so DNA is one type of macromolecules. And then when it is enclosed in a membrane, it is called organelles. And then organelles, when it's enclosed in a cell. And then when cells comes together and they form tissues, and then tissues comes together, they form organs or organ systems such as nerve system. And then organ system comes together, it creates organisms together, it will create population, and then populations together create communities, and then communities together create ecosystem. And ecosystem includes as well the abiotic part of life, of biosphere, and then lots of ecosystem together, and everything else, like when we group everything together, it becomes biosphere. So that's the organization of living things. But we talk that organelles is part of the organizations of living things, but do bacteria have organelles? Do you know? So bacteria is a single cell organism, and it just lives everywhere. Do you think it has organelles? Those who answered no, you are correct. Bacteria has no organelles. So organelles is a component in a cell that is enclosed in a membrane. But bacteria, being a prokaryote, it doesn't have organelles. Its DNA is, and genome is genetic material. Its chromosome is just mushed up together. Well, not really mushed up together, but it's just like clumped in the middle of the cell, just floating around anywhere in the cell, and it's called nuclear region. But it doesn't have the DNA itself, the chromosome itself, doesn't have a membrane that that encompass itself. Unlike eukaryotic cells, it has this nucleus. So that's one organelle here. Organelle. There are lots of organelles in eukaryotic cells. So bacteria, it doesn't have organelles. So we talked, so I already mentioned about prokaryotes and also eukaryote. So prokaryote, it has no membrane bound nucleus, and its circular DNA free floating in the cell. So I already said that its chromosome is circular, it's just floating around the cell. It doesn't have the chromosome that is linear like eukaryote. Like As human, we have, I think, 23 sets of pairs of chromosome, which is linear chromosome. But for prokaryotes, it only has one chromosome. It only has one circular chromosome like that. However, they do have plasmids, like a small circular DNA, and these plasmids, bacteria is able to move it around. Like they are able to like share these plasmids, the DNA in the plasmids, with other bacteria as well. Sometimes they do also share the genetic material from its main chromosome, but normally this happens within the DNA that's within the plasmid. And eukaryote, it has membrane-bound nucleus. So it has a nucleus here. The DNA is inside the nucleus in a linear chromosome. So that's the main difference. It's with nucleus and without nucleus. So bacteria is here. If you see at the tree of life, phylogenetic tree, bacteria is there. This is archaea. Archaea is also a prokaryote. And then this is eukarya. So these right here, including animals, fungi, and plants, and other families as well. All of these are eukaryotes, so they have membrane-bound nucleus. And so this is the tree of life, yeah? So tree of life, when you look at it like this is the beginning of life, we say. So the beginning of life here, and then it goes up, and then over time, it separates over here. Some made it into as bacteria, and then some specialized into other cells, which over time it breaks up right here. Some becomes archaea, and then some becomes eukaryotic cells. And then it specialized, and then speciation happens, and then become other species and life. So when you look at phylogenetic tree, you don't just like draw it just like, you know, I just want to draw it like that, like that, like that, like that. It doesn't happen that way, okay? So the line corresponds to time. So if you look here, so this one is shorter, longer, longer, this one even longer. So the length of the line corresponds to the length of time it takes for the lineage to separate. Okay, so but this is the basic prokaryotic, this is the basic tree of life, phylogenetic tree. However, it's actually very complex if you want to put all of the species in a phylogenetic tree. It will not even look like this. This is, I would say, simple. If you want to put everything, it's just very, very, very crowded. But you get what I'm trying to say, that phylogenetic tree is actually very, very, very complex. So if you look at this phylogenetic tree, it doesn't really look like a tree because it's organized in this way, but this is the origin, and then break out like that, break out like that, and like that, and then to its individual. So how did phylogenetic tree come to be? Up until now, we've learned about formation of the universe, the earth, life, and what makes life life. So the metabolism, reproduction, and also the building block, similarity among all living things. So we learned that life, organisms, we have DNA. All organisms have DNA. And the driver for biodiversity, we've learned about that as well. We learned that the location where the organism is will make the organism there somehow adapt to the environment. So can you guess the answer to this question based on what we've learned? So whoever answer that is because of evolution, you're correct. Okay. So evolution makes phylogenetic tree the way it is. So evolution, it is, I think you've heard about the theory of evolution. So this is Charles Darwin. So sometimes people say like Darwin theory, Darwin's theory of evolution. But this is Alfred, no, I forgot his name, but his first name is Alfred. So both of them, they work together. So in, if I'm not mistaken, 1855, so both of them made voyages, a voyage to around the world to look at the biodiversity, plants, animals, whatever that they can observe. And then, but they are not working together at that time yet. So both of them make individual journey. And then in 1855, Alfred sent a letter to Darwin saying, okay, let's work together. I know that you are working on the same thing too. So they work together on the theory of evolution. So the theory of evolution is actually like the work of both of them. But up until now, people normally know Darwin, but not really Charles Darwin, but not really Alfred. Sorry, I forgot your name. But anyway, in 1959, if I'm not mistaken, Darwin published the book, The Origin of Species or something, The Origin of Life. Excuse my brain, I'm a bit sleepy. But anyway, 1859, Darwin published that very famous book. So I think that's that what makes people know him more than Alfred. Anyway, I believe that most of you in my class are of Muslim faith. So we will have a little bit of, I would say, clash a little bit with this idea of evolution, but I'm yet to read about these two papers. So this paper right here say that the theory of evolution is already discussed amongst Muslim scholars in the 8th century. But then this paper right here, it critiques this paper right here, I think. I'm yet to read this paper, so I cannot say much about it, but I believe that, well, I'm a Muslim, yeah? So we know that in the Quran, sorry, I need to go a little bit into religion here, because I don't want to teach something that will make people sway away from their religion. Okay, I'm just teaching. Anyway, we know, as a Muslim, we know what the origin of human is. So I want you to learn this for the sake of knowledge, what we have now, what human now knows about evolution, what humans accept now about evolution, so that we can navigate our way in life especially if you are going towards research. This is very important to know. But always know that take everything with a pinch of salt, and always know that what we know is not, is only like a very tiny drop in an ocean. Okay, I believe that there are lots more to learn. There must be something that we currently as humans missed. But just learn for the sake of learning, and so we are not too closed in our thinking, so that we understand what other people are thinking, and then you know um, learn everything with a pinch of salt. Just remember that we human, we have our own capacity of learning, and also we have our limitation of learning. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. So the basic mechanisms for evolution, there are four mechanisms for evolution. There are natural selection, there are mutation, there are genetic drift, and also there are migration. And natural selection, I think most of you have heard about it. Mutation, I think most of you have heard about it. Genetic drift, maybe might not lots of people. Migration, that's pretty straightforward. I think you can guess what it is. And but natural selection, mutation, I think most people have heard about it, but not really know the details of it. So let's go into natural selection. It is also known as the survival of the fittest, and the organisms with an advantage to survive. Organisms with an advantage, they will survive to reproduction phase of life and then pass their gene to their offspring. So if you remember last week, I showed you a video about the history, the big history. Remember in one of the videos, it shows this eagle, one eagle with a good eyesight. There's more probability for that eagle to catch prey and then survive and reproduce, and not as opposed to eagle that doesn't have a good eyesight. So this eagle with a good eyesight is more likely to survive and reproduce and produce more eagles with good eyesight, as opposed to eagles with bad eyesight. That eagle might not have survived until reproduction phase of life. And so organisms without any advantage tend to die before able to reproduce. So over time, organisms with an advantage will propagate, while organisms without any advantage will die out. So over time, there will be more of that eagle with good eyesight and less of that eagle with bad eyesight. And over time, that eagle with bad eyesight might get extinct. So the product of natural selection is adaptation of species to its environment. So if you see like stick insects, that is one type of adaptation. It's mimicry. You know, some snakes that are non-poisonous, they adapt to their environment. They by having skin that looks like a poisonous snake, but they are not poisonous. So that's natural selection. So for example, here, I show, so this is beetles. So first generation right here, before pesticide application, we have a lot of beetles. The red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then apply the pesticide application. The white beetles from 8 becomes only 2, and the red one survive. And then after that, they propagate more of the red one. We have 4 and 4 of the red ones, 4 red ones and then 4 white ones, and then after the pesticide application, the white ones, most of the white ones dies off. So we can see here that the red one is actually quite resistant to the pesticide, and it can survive more. So it's like survival of the fittest. It's, you know, natural selection, although this selection is because of pesticide application. And if you see, this is a painting by Giovanni Stanchi in the 17th century. This painting has a watermelon right here. And if you can see the watermelon, it has like spiral kind of, it has thick skin and then kind of spiral type of flesh, and then lots of seeds. And I think this looks like a, I don't know, probably pumpkin. Anyway, the watermelon that we have now is nothing like this. You know, our watermelon looks like this instead of like this. This is from the same painter as well. And if you look at corn, this is our corn right now, but this is its ancestors. And it goes like that, and then it goes like this. So this is a type of selection, but it's not natural, because this is due to breeding. Because as farmers, you would want to grow crops that has lots of edible parts. So if you imagine yourself as a farmer, you will get probably you have like a few plants, a few watermelon plants, and then you have this watermelon with lots of flesh, less seed, and then this one has lots of seeds and less flesh. Of course, you want to propagate, you want to grow more flesh, less seed, instead of the less flesh, more seeds. So over time, what farmers do is they select for the characteristic of the plants that they want. And over time, the crops that we eat, our vegetables and fruits, they change over time quite quickly, because we select for the characteristic that we want. Natural selection happens the same way. However, it goes a little bit slower, because it depends on natural occurrence. Instead of like forest, we can kind of select this one and this one, we want to make it together. And this is a video. I want you to see this video. This video shows the evolution of a bacteria on a mega plate petri dish. So what it is it shows, so they have a big plate of agar, and then they put bacteria to grow on the agar, and then they put antibiotics with increasing concentration towards the middle of the plate. And you can see in real life mutation happening at each of the border of the different concentration of the antibiotics. Okay, let's watch it.
So what we ended up building was basically a petri dish, except that it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And the way we set it up is that there are 9 bands, and at the base of each of these bands, we put a normal petri dish thick agar with different amounts of antibiotic. On the outside, there's no antibiotic. Just in from that, there's barely more than the E. coli can survive. Inside of that, there's 10 times as much, 100 times, and then finally the middle band has 1,000 times as much antibiotic. And then across the top of it, pour some thin agar that bacteria can move around in. The background is black because there's ink in it, and the bacteria appear as white. First, you see they spread in the area where there's no antibiotic, up until the point they can no longer survive. Then a mutant appears on the right. It's resistant to the antibiotic, it spreads, until it starts to compete with other mutants around it. When these mutants hit the next boundary, they too have to pause and develop new mutations to make it into 10 times as much antibiotic. And then you see the different mutants repeat this at 100. And after about 11 days, they finally make it into 1,000 times as much antibiotic as the wild type can survive. And so we can see by this process of accumulating successive mutations that bacteria, which are normally sensitive to an antibiotic, can evolve resistance to extremely high concentrations in a short period of time.
So that's evolution of bacteria on a plate. We can see evolution happening in bacteria but pretty quickly, because bacteria has they have a short lifespan. So normally they can reproduce every, like for E. coli, with a good condition. If everything is perfect condition for them to live, they can reproduce every 20 minutes. So that's why in bacteria we can see evolution happening pretty quickly over several generations. So another thing that I want you to take from that video is always finish your antibiotic. Okay, because if you don't finish your antibiotics, that means that some of the bacteria in your body will have developed the resistance towards the antibiotic. So next time when you get sick, even from a different bacteria, the bacteria from your body can share that genetic information of the bacteria of the antibiotic resistant to the bacteria that make you sick, and then when you are given antibiotic, the bacteria that is making you sick can survive with the antibiotic. That's what happened with the antibiotic resistant bacteria. If you've heard of MRSA, I think Google it. I think it's MRSA. It's multi-resistant something. So that bacteria is very resistant to a lot of antibiotics. So it's really hard for someone who contracted that bacteria and got sick from it. It's very hard for doctors to treat them, because the bacteria is resistant to pretty much all antibiotics that's available. Okay. So in the video, it says something about so in the video, it says it mentioned several times about evolution. The bacteria evolve. The bacteria produce not evolution, mutation. The bacteria mutate when the bacteria like grow towards the edge of the antibiotic, towards the edge of the different antibiotic concentration. The bacteria, some of the bacteria developed successful mutation, and that allows them to resist that concentration of antibiotics. So mutant, it can do that to a bacteria, and also so bacteria is a prokaryote. It doesn't matter if it's a prokaryote or eukaryote, mutation can have a significant effect to an organism. So in this picture, this Drosophila is fruit fly. If I'm not mistaken, this one is a mutation in one single gene. If I'm not mistaken, I have to check back. But anyway, this mutation caused the antenna of these fruit flies to develop the place where the antenna should be, developed legs instead of antenna. So that's how powerful mutation can do to an organism. And if you Google more, there's another one, but I didn't share the picture here with you. The Drosophila, the fruit fly, instead of having 2 wings, it has 4 wings because of a mutation. So mutation can have a very significant effect to organisms. And if you think about humans as well, if you, we've heard of like syndromes. Some people have chromosome something syndrome and things like that. Sometimes they have a mutation on a gene, or they have a deletion. Deletion is also type of mutation. So like for people with Down syndrome, they have an extra chromosome, I think. So that's a extra chromosome. But some people have deletion of things, of genes, and they have and they developed it can affect their lives very significantly. And there are 2 theory of evolution. One is Lamarck theory, and also the other one is Darwin theory. So Lamarck theory comes before Darwin. It's in his theory. So in his theory, the organisms adapt to the environment by, like in this picture right here. So the giraffe is short. They are trying to eat to reach the leaves, high leaves on top of the tree. So the giraffe like stretch its neck, and both of the giraffe are able to reach the bottom part of the leaves, and then they stretch their neck a little bit more, and then they are able to eat the leaves at the top of the tree. And in this process, none of the giraffes die. However, Darwin's theory is when there are 2 giraffes, one is a short giraffe and then one is a slightly taller giraffe, the short giraffe that cannot reach the food source will eventually die because it just cannot eat. So the slightly higher giraffe still able to survive, but when it has a competition with a taller giraffe, which can reach a higher level of the leaves on the tree, so this taller giraffe has a more advantage, and so this shorter giraffe will die as well. And what left is the giraffe with a high long neck. So Lamarck theory is people don't use it anymore because it doesn't make sense. I mean, if I want, for example, if I work out very rigorously and then I build muscle, that muscle will not be passed down to my children, okay? Because that changes only happen to me and it cannot be transferred to my offspring. So we talk about mutation. So mutation happens by chance. Mutation just happens. Normally it's either by chance. Sometimes the cell don't replicate the genetic material properly, and so sometimes mutation happens, and sometimes mutation happens because of other factor, for example radiation. If you read about the atomic bomb in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, that atomic bomb affects the people living in that area and cause deformities. So like radiation, it can cause a mutation, X-ray, and also UV ray from the sun. That's why we have to wear our sunscreen. Otherwise, we might develop cancer, because cancer is actually like skin cancer. It actually happens when the skin cell um, develop mutation, and it just cannot stop replicating itself. So it's just, keep on spreading and spreading and spreading. So wear your sunscreen. Anyway, so mutation creates variation. And if you look at here, so this is the original cell, the wild type, and then it creates two mutation right here. This mutation is not favorable, so this this is the wild type, and this one is a mutation. We give it number 1. And then what offspring, and then this one is mutated as well. Yep. So each of these produce 2 mutants, and then again is natural selection. These two has advantages, so they stays and then they reproduce. So over time, this one right here, well, it's kind of gone. So what survived is from here on. Well, this one stays then. So this one, over time, it just dies off, and then this one continue to survive. And it depends on the mutation that happens after that, and also the condition that selects for it. And if you can see here, this is the petri dish that we look at just now in the video. So that's how it moves. That's the mutation when it happens. It started, and if you see, it started to create that phylogenetic trees in it. So that's what you can see with bacteria, because it goes because they reproduce so quickly. So you can see and like see this evolution in real life. So what exactly is mutation? People say a lot about it, I know, but actually people don't really know what exactly happened. So mutation is a change in DNA. So types of mutation, there are a few more, but here I just point out a few. Point mutation, deletion, also repetition, and it may cause malfunction proteins when mutation happens. So for example, here, this has no mutation. At a DNA level, it is TTC, and then mRNA level is AAG. So T with A, T with A, C with G. And AAG translates into listing. And a silent mutation is when the DNA has a mutation, but so in this example, it has a mutation at the C. Instead of C, it becomes a T. But when it translates, it still doesn't change its amino acid. It's still the same as the no mutation. A nonsense mutation is when the mutation, this is still a point mutation, just one change in the DNA sequence. So instead of TTC, it is ATC. But when it gets transcripted, it becomes a stop codon. And this causes the protein to be truncated. So if the protein should be like this long, it might be this long, okay? And missense mutation. So TTC becomes TCC, TTC becomes TCC or TGC, and it just becomes a different amino acid from the original. A conservative missense mutation, it still has the same functionality, the amino acid still has the same functionality as the original one, but non-conservative is just a different one than the original one. So this is how I don't know if you guys are aware of what DNA does. So DNA, we know that DNA, it has that ATGC sequences, and that codes for the protein that our body wants to produce. So from DNA level, it will get translated into mRNA level, and then that will get transcripted into amino acid, which is like a sequence of amino acid is a protein. Okay, so this, for example, this blue, this is how it looks like in visual form. So this blue strands, these are the DNA, and if you can see here, because DNA has pairing, it doesn't just move up just one DNA strand, it will have its pair. Okay, so this is the DNA strands. So ATGCCGC. So here it is the opposite of that, TACGGCG. So it goes like that. It goes like that. And this is the template strand. Template strand is the one that has that will be read by the RNA polymerase to synthesize RNA. Okay. So this RNA polymerase is a protein. So this whole thing right here, it is a protein, and it will get attached to the DNA, opens the DNA up, this DNA strands up, read the template strand, and synthesize the RNA. So it will, the DNA polymerase will move towards that side. It will continue reading this one, and then this will continue to get synthesized. Okay, so like ATG, it will be UAC, and continue, and the RNA will come off from towards that side. Okay. And then the RNA will get read and by ribosomes, small ribosomal subunit will get attached to the mRNA, and then a big ribosome subunit will get attached on top of it, on top of the mRNA, and then tRNA will come bringing individual amino acid. Okay, so what it does is, as ribosome move towards that, so the first one here, it gets read one, and then tRNA that matches the reading on the RNA will come and keep on bringing amino acid and keep on like attaching it to the strand. So attach another one here, attach another one here, attach another one here, as the ribosome move towards move along the mRNA. And if you see here, this is the amino acid table. So if the mRNA, say for example here, so for example here, let's say here, ATG, okay? Let's see, the first letter is A, the second letter is T, T is a U, and then G, G, okay, ATG, so it's ATG, it's here. So it is MET, methionine. So this is the starting of protein. And then the next one is CCG. So the first one is MET, the second one is CCG. So that's C, G. So that's here. Okay. And then the third one is CAA. So CAA here. So it continues like that. Okay, I think you get the point. So you can imagine if only one letter get say the deleted will form another protein altogether, because the codon will be right like 3 bases each. So if one base gets deleted, the whole frame will shift, and it will cause a different protein to be produced altogether. So you can see how only one small mutation can change a protein significantly. So in turns, that will affect the organism significantly as well. Okay. However, important point, for a mutation to be hereditary, it needs to happen in the reproductive cell. So for example, like I said, if you go under the sun without your sunscreen on, and then you develop mutation on your skin, that mutation will only affect that part of your skin. Okay, if like, for example, you develop it here, it will only affect you here, unless it just, you know, replicate and just move around your body and you develop cancer and things like that. But it will only affect you. For a mutation to be hereditary, for a mutation to be able to be passed down to your children, it needs to happen in the reproductive cells. So that means ovum and also sperm. However, so that's in a sense, that's for organisms that is that needs to have sexual activities, that use a sexual route of reproduction. However, for the organisms that doesn't have reproductive cell, for example, bacteria, if this one bacteria just happen to have that mutation, it will of course transferred into to its offspring. So here, like this guy right here with all his muscles, that muscle characteristic will not, that big muscle characteristic will not go to his offspring. But here, green eye, that green eye will get transferred to her offspring. Okay, because it deals with genetic, and if something that is not genetic, you cannot transfer it to your offspring. So what is artificial selection? We've learned about natural selection. So what is artificial selection? I already talked about this before. And artificial selection is the one with the farmers selection, selecting for crops that they want, or for animals, like for big, you know, cows, for goat, chicken, watermelon, corn, rice, wheat. Okay, so it is a selection. It's still a selection, but it happens artificially, in the sense that there's an outside factor coming in, like us selecting for the traits instead of nature selecting for the trait. Okay. So so that's, we already talked about mutation and also natural selection and artificial selection. So what is genetic drift? So genetic drift is when organisms leave behind more offspring than others by chance, not because of they are more at a disadvantage of surviving. This causes more of their genes to populate the next generation. So if you look, here, like this one, the red bugs, the red beetles have advantage of surviving pesticide as opposed to the white beetles. However, for genetic drift, it has no advantages whatsoever against when compared to other organisms. However, it just happened that they produce more offspring than other organisms. So this causes more of their genes to populate the next generation. So because it happens by chance, for example, here the green beetle and the brown beetle, suddenly the person just walk past and then just happen to step on the green beetles. So for the next generation, we will see a decrease in a population of the green beetle because not that many green beetles survive when compared to the brown beetles. Okay, so it's just by chance. And migration, of course, it's pretty straightforward. Organisms move from a place to another. For example, here, from the mainland, we have a red and yellow ladybug, and then maybe the two ladybugs just happen to be on a ship, and then the ship goes to an island, and then they got off the island, and then they populate the island, and there will be only red ladybugs on the island. Okay, so that's migration. So there are two types of evolution. There are microevolution, which is an evolution at a small scale within a single population, and macroevolution, which is evolution at a big scale above the species level. So, what is the definition of a population? Excuse me. Let's discuss that in the forum on Putraras. I want to know what you understand about population. Okay, so let's talk about microevolution. Like I said, it's evolution at a small scale within a single population. It means that changes in gene frequency within a population. For example, in the first generation, it has 80% of green genes and then 20% of brown genes. And then after a year, suddenly 60% of green genes. So it decreased by 20% and then increased in 20% of brown genes. So we can see that. So this is what microevolution is. So this might tell us that probably the brown gene has a higher has an advantage living in the population. However, you have to also think about genetic drift. It might be that the green beetles, the green genes just get destroyed, stepped by another person, you know. So that's microevolution. You can see the changes in the gene frequency within a population, within a generation. I think I want to say this is within a generation. No. That's right. Within a population, and you can see the changes within a generation. And then macroevolution is evolution at a bigger scale. So for example, origins of mammals and radiation of flowering plants. So it has 4 patterns. It has stasis, stasis, character change, lineage splitting or speciation, and also extinction. So stasis is when the form of the organism is not changed over time. So if you see here, so the blue lineage is just go up like that. It doesn't go like that or like that, or produce more branches. It just goes straight. And also the red one as well, it just goes straight over time. And this fish right here, apparently, I forgot the name. Apparently people in 1939, 38, I think, people thought that this fish is already extinct for 80 million years. However, they found that this fish actually still survive without much change in its body form. So it has been stasis for about 80 million years. So, and then the second one is character change, which means that the body form changes over time. And it can happen, like it can happen to change right here, and then it can go back, and then it can go back right there over time. It is just, it doesn't mean that the change need to be just one direction. It can go whichever way that it wants over time, okay? And for example, this lineage A right here, it goes back and forth over time. However, there is lineage B right here, it goes pretty much stable change over time towards one direction. Whereas this one, it's over time, is pretty much, it is a lot of changes over time, but not just one direction. And for example, here changes in the number of ribs across 8 trilobite lineages. So here we have 8 lineages, 8 species, and we can see that it changes quite a bit. Most of them are towards that form, like adding more ribs over time, but sometimes they can go back towards a lesser number of ribs. So that's character change. And the third one is lineage splitting or speciation. So if we start from here, at this point of time, the species breaks into 3. And then here, at around the same time, these 2 species breaks into 3 each. But this one here, it doesn't break, it just goes up straight. So we can see that lineage B right here, it barely changes, it barely splits into another species, except for one time right here. However, the blue one right here, it changes quite a bit, a few times, but when it comes right here, it doesn't happen all at the same time. It's just like, okay, at this time, this one changed, at this time, this one changed, at this time, this one changed, at this time, this one changed. So you get the point. It's just at any point of time, only 1, 2, or 3 changes happening. However, if you look here for this one, the red species right here, it changed into 3, and then suddenly here at about the same time, it each of the 3 splits into 2 or 3, and then here at around the same time, it splits more. So the changes can be like this, or like this. Okay. So the fourth one is extinction. Extinction is when the species just extinct. So for example, mass extinction. So here is an example of mass extinction. Just lots of the species just dies at that point of time. However, 3 survive. So these 3 can has the opportunity to radiate and create more species, as they don't have to like they don't have to compete with other species for resources. So what have we learned today? Yeah, we have learned that about components of biosphere. There are lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. Yeah. And then we learn about the organization of living things, from organelles, cells, organs, organisms, da, da, da. And then we learn about prokaryotes and also versus eukaryotes. Prokaryotes has no nucleus and eukaryotes has nucleus. And we also learn about basic mechanisms of evolution. We learned about natural selection. We learn about mutation. We learn about genetic drift, and also we learn about migration. And also we learn about the 2 types of evolution. I forgot. The 2 types of evolution. The micro evolution, and also the macro evolution, which has 4 types of macro evolution. Okay. We will learn more about evolution next week. Not really evolution, but we will look more on the micro and macro evolution next week, especially the speciation. Anyway, that's all for today. For more information, please go to this. Please go to this website. Actually, just evolution.berkeley.edu is very, very, very interesting. It has lots of information about evolution if you would like to know more. And don't forget to submit your attendance for today, which I already told you before. But before we go, I want to share with you your drawings from last week. Remember, I asked you guys to draw yourself in a drawing. So these are the drawings that you sent me. 60 of you sent me your drawings. I managed to put everything here. Oh, sorry, I missed this one. I will look into it. Anyway, oh, and also the anyway, interesting. There are some, we have a bear in the class, we have a panda in the class, we have a dragon in the class, we have a few cats in the class, maybe my long lost cousin. We have a bee in the class, we have 2 flowers in the class, we have a dog, we have a cake, we have a cat looking pastry chef. We have also a pretty interesting one. I believe we have an alien in our class. We have 2 very dark drawings here with light coming out, like, you know, light or diamond. We have a very interesting drawing as well. What's that? Surfing with her eye closed. Pretty wild. But most of all, I want to highlight this one because I'm very intrigued. We have this. What does this mean? I hope I'm not this one. What is this? Who's this pitiful person? And like, you know, this is a very happy face for someone who's stepping on another person with blood coming out. We have a psychopath in the class. Anyway, very interesting. And anyway, that's all for this week. And I really like and I really enjoy looking at your drawing. Sorry, I could not fit all of your drawing in a big form because there are like 60 of you. And thank you for all your nice drawing. And if you want to share with me the description of your drawing, please share. You can put it in the forum. Actually, you can share your drawing in the forum and then write there why you draw what you drew. And I'll see you next week. Bye bye.